Good evening, I'm Nima Rajan, and this is Forum Daily for Friday, April 8th. We start our cast with some good news on Canada's economy. New data indicates the unemployment rate fell from 5.5% in February to 5.3% last month. This knocks it down to its lowest rate since Statistics Canada started keeping records in 1976. The agency reports the economy created 72,500 jobs. The majority of the gains came from Quebec and Ontario. CIBC's senior economist Andrew Grantham believes there may be room for the unemployment rate to fall a little further. On the heels of the 2022 budget announcement, MPs will open 4 days of debate on the government motion today. Then they will rise for a 2-week break and not get back at it until the 25th of this month. Since the Liberals honored their agreement with the NDP, New Democrats say they will vote for the budget. The budget forecasts that federal program spending will fall to $425.4 billion in the new fiscal year, with a deficit of $52.8 billion. Those are the lowest since before the pandemic started. Well, according to the budget, Ottawa is raising taxes on Canada's big banks and life insurance companies. The federal budget includes a one-time 15% charge on taxable income above $1 billion for the 2021 tax year for the country's big financial institutions. Ottawa also plans to permanently increase the corporate income tax rate for banking and life insurance groups by 1.5 percentage points for taxable income above $100 million. The Canadian Bankers Association notes that banks are already among the largest corporate taxpayers in Canada. The federal government has also proposed a pilot project creating a menstrual equity fund in its 2022 budget, putting $25 million towards it over the next 2 years. Women and Gender Equality Canada will be in charge of creating the project to help make menstrual products available to Canadians. New Democrat critic for women and gender equality, Leah Gazan, says these products should be treated as an essential hygiene product like toilet paper. Her Conservative counterpart, MP Karen Vecchio, says she doesn't support a subsidy for menstrual products, and she would want to look further at the root causes that explain why menstrual products get priced so high. All right, well, meanwhile, the Canadian Federation of Independent Business says retailers, gyms, and event spaces are taking yet another hit. This comes as workers fall ill with COVID-19 or steer clear of those sectors altogether, fearing further lockdowns. An apparent sixth wave of the pandemic is causing staffing shortages in sectors such as healthcare, hospitality, and retail. Several provinces are bolstering their defenses, with Quebec and PEI extending their mask mandates. In Ontario, Quebec, and BC plan to expand access to second booster doses of vaccines. Well, this comes as the poultry industry tackles a different type of illness. New cases of avian flu have been found in poultry flocks in Ontario and Alberta. The Canadian Food Inspection Agency says the H5N1 strain of avian flu has been found in flocks in Alberta's Mountain View and Ponoka counties and in the city of Markham, the municipality of Chatham-Kent, and Prince Edward County in Ontario. The agency says the cases have been reported to the World Organization for Animal Health. All right, well, meantime, the group representing 380 Alberta Crown prosecutors is warning Premier Jason Kenney's government that its members could go out on strike in the next month or so. The Alberta Crown Attorneys Association says it's not asking the government to back up a Brinks truck and give it a bunch of money, but it does want a salary grid that puts the prosecutors on par with Ontario and British Columbia and the ability to collectively bargain with the government. Well, Air Canada's CEO, Michael Rousseau, just can't seem to shake off the backlash from a speech last year. The Commissioner of Official Languages has issued a preliminary report on this. It comes after receiving a record 2,680 complaints about the speech last November. People complained the speech, which was delivered almost entirely in English, did not meet the airline's obligations under the Official Languages Act. Raymond Theberge says the concerns were valid and the parties involved will be able to comment before he issues a final report. After the speech, Mr. Rousseau told reporters that he didn't need to learn French to get by in Montreal. He then later apologized and started taking French lessons. On the East Coast, Mi'kmaq is going to be designated as Nova Scotia's first language. The Progressive Conservative government introduced legislation to bring about the change yesterday. The bill also establishes a joint committee to create a multi-year strategy protecting the language. Leaders in Mi'kmaq education say they've heard concerns about language loss in their communities in recent years, but there has been a resurgence among young people. We'll have more news from around the world up next. Welcome back. Forum Daily's Energy Update is up now. We'll hear the latest about gas and oil prices with Dan McTeague, Senior Petroleum Analyst at GasWizard.ca. He joins us now. Take it away, Dan.
Well, hello again, Nima, and thank you for that. What a bizarre week we're seeing on energy markets and, of course, the price of gasoline right across Canada. But we've had a few interesting events this week. Before I get into where we are, where we're going, maybe just a little commentary on the federal budget. A lot of spending, a lot of high fives, but nothing in the way of any due regard to the energy sector, other than perhaps some allowance for carbon capture. I was speaking before the House of Commons Environment Committee, a little bit like a fox in the proverbial chicken coop. Interesting that many people still believe that we can do away with oil and gas. There seems to be this imaginary world of thinking we can simply do away with it. And yet the funding for a lot of those organizations, in fact, the funding for federal and provincial governments and municipal governments to the same extent, wouldn't be possible if you got rid of the oil and gas sector. So I thought it was somewhat ironic. More importantly, I think I presaged, like everyone else did, if the federal Liberals were able to get away with a budget in which they are not getting, the bond rating agencies coming in and downgrading us, it's because of the very industry that they're attempting to kill. Make no mistake, the $100 plus oil, what consumers are paying, collection of GST, HST, those things are really lining the coffers of the Canadian government and allowing it to make even more pronouncements on spending. I find it sadly ironic, though, that we still have politicians in this country who want to think that the best way to proceed with this is to kill the golden goose. I'll leave that for a side, but one other positive piece of news, whether it was a good takeaway or not, was Bay du Nord, the project off 500 miles off the coast of Newfoundland. Very similar to some of the other projects that are there. Obviously, a timely allowance by the government. Whether or not they impose their harsh cap on emissions is irrelevant. The reality is that both Atlantic and Pacific coasts need a lot more Canadian energy, given the alternatives. When you think of alternatives like Iran, Venezuela, Saudi Arabia, and yes, Russia, you kind of really want the Canadian oil sector to get back up on its feet very quickly to provide a modicum of security to the world. And we can all agree on that, despite those who believe that we can wish fossil fuels away. The reality is showing something very, very different. Now, this week, the Biden administration, in coordination with the International Energy Agency, decided that they were going to try to flood the market with oil. Interesting, because it's based on reserves. Interesting that it's the International Energy Agency coordinating this, because only 11 months ago they were saying we should stop investing and get rid of all new oil and gas production. Of course, just a few weeks later, realizing their numbers were wrong. It's kind of ironic that they're pleading, looking for any way in which to stabilize global energy prices in light of the attack by Russia and, of course, the sanctions, which sooner or later, hopefully Europe will find its spine and cut off Russia. Because as it stands today, we've seen for the past 37 days, Europe continues to finance Mr. Putin's war to the tune of $1 billion a day. That's absolutely shameful. And it puts aside the global rhetoric about our concern about the plight of the Ukrainian people. Back to gasoline. I think we're going to continue to see this sort of tug of war, the effect of putting reserves into action has caused a bit of a downfall in oil prices. But it's a little bit like a baseball analogy, given that we're starting the baseball season here in Canada. You're basically bringing your closing pitcher in the second inning to do and hope that they can stand for the next 7 innings. It doesn't happen very often, and it's not going to end very well. And it's going to continue to create tightness in supply. As a result, I'm predicting this week we're going to see a pretty significant increase in gasoline prices, except for Vancouver. And the reason for that is simply because we're switching from winter to summer gasoline. There's about a 9-cent difference, 8 to 9 cent difference that'll have to be passed on to consumers. That is a thing. From September 15th until April 15th, we have winter gasoline, cheaper to make. And from April 15th until September 15th, which is a period we're coming into next week, we're going to have to switch over to gasoline that is formulated in such a way that you don't have, instant ignition of your vehicles, creating knock-on and, of course, some environmental concerns as far as vapor is concerned. So all of this means that this time next week, average prices in Canada will move from about $1.65, $1.68, all the way up to about $1.75, 78. And I would expect that best time to gas up will be sometime before Wednesday of next week, if not sooner. Go to gaswizard.ca. You'll see the 2-day prediction, and there be able to give you a bit of a heads up, hopefully saving you a little bit of money. So that's it for this week, and we'll talk next week, Nima. Thanks for having me again, and don't forget, fill up before next Wednesday.
All right, thanks for that, Dan. That was Dan McTeague, Senior Petroleum Analyst at gaswizard.ca. He is also the president of Canadians for Affordable Energy. Stay with us. Up next, Forum Daily's Crypto and Digital Asset Update with Catherine Murray is coming up next. Welcome back. Forum Daily's Crypto and Digital Asset Update is up next. Catherine Murray, host of The Buck Stops Here, joins us now with her take on this constantly evolving world. Catherine, take it away.
Thanks, Nima. Hello, everyone, and welcome to your weekly crypto and digital asset update. I am Catherine Murray. Well, the total market cap of cryptocurrencies now stands at $2 trillion. That's essentially unchanged from last week. There certainly has been a lot of volatility in the space in cryptocurrencies alongside the equity markets. We have seen Bitcoin down by about 3% week over week, but of course, we'll see where the trading day ends. And as I say that, I sound so old-fashioned because, as we know, cryptocurrencies trade 24/7. So we'll see, of course, where the movement is. But there's still a $40,000 handle on BTC Bitcoin this week, which is showing you that there is some stability taking place. For anybody who's very invested and interested in learning about blockchain, digital assets, and cryptocurrencies, they are all down in Miami this week, a 4-day conference called Bitcoin 2022. And interestingly, you can check out all the presentations online. Also, in conjunction with the conference, the trading platform Robinhood is rolling out their cryptocurrency wallet to 2 million users. They did announce the product back in September, but they announced the launch at the Bitcoin 2022 conference. Meanwhile, money managers in the UK will now be allowed to own cryptocurrencies in their portfolios. This is big news for traditional money managers. It was announced in a speech by the Economic Secretary to the Treasury, who went on to say that they really want to position the UK as a pro-innovation jurisdiction, and that never in the history in commerce or of commerce has there been an invention as hyped and as misunderstood as blockchain. Meanwhile, fundraising continues at a very strong pace, with Binance raising $200 million at a $4.5 billion valuation. This is the first financing in 2 years, with big investors backing it, such as Circle Ventures as well as VanEck. Goldman Sachs is joining other investors in an $88 million round for Web3 and blockchain security firm Certic, bringing its valuation to $2 billion. Interestingly, there was a lot of interest in this deal. Apparently, it was oversubscribed. And the company Certic has done about 4 rounds of financing in the past 10 months. In order to do that, there's obviously a lot of demand to get those deals done. The valuation has grown 10 times. And according to the CEO and founder, the funds will be used to build new products and a one-stop security platform for the entire Web3 world. That's according to the CEO. Security, of course, is very much in demand, as there's been over $1.2 billion in losses and fraud in the first quarter of 2022. Interestingly, a lot of merger and acquisition activity going on in the crypto world, with crypto startup Wire being acquired by payments company Bold for $1.5 billion, making it the largest deal, merger deal that is, of course, in the crypto sector other than SPACs, special purpose acquisition companies, or blank check companies. And in fact, there's been a record pace for deals in the US crypto sector over the past year, according to Deal Logic. The first quarter of 2022 saw $1.25 billion, putting it on pace to exceed 2021, which stands at $4.9 billion. And lastly, there is a metaverse tech firm called Improbable. It has raised over $150 million, led by very well-known tech investors Andreessen Horowitz, as well as SoftBank's Vision Fund 2. The goal is to build a network of interoperable Web3 metaverses dubbed M2, meaning, from what I understand, giving people the tools to design their own metaverse. Nima, I'll leave it there. Back to you.
Designing your own metaverse. Very interesting, Catherine. Thanks for that. That was Catherine Murray, host of The Buck Stops Here. For more analysis and news on the markets, be sure to tune in to her there. All right, let's turn to Myanmar now, as foreign business groups are balking at new rules for currency. It requires businesses and individuals to convert all foreign currency held in bank accounts into the local currency. A statement was issued Friday by the American Chamber of Commerce and similar groups. It says the new regulations issued by the central bank earlier this week effectively prevent the use of foreign currency in Myanmar, and it would disconnect the country from the global economy and financial system. Japan's embassy told the government that the policy would make it hard for Japanese businesses and the embassy to operate within Myanmar. The change appears meant to alleviate a shortage of hard currency for the military-led government. Amazon is raising the price of its Prime membership in Canada by $2 to $9.99. It plans to begin phasing in higher fees for new subscribers immediately, while existing users will be seeing their bills increase starting next month. It's the first price increase for Prime since Amazon launched the membership for Canadians in January 2013. News from around the world after the break. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says thousands of people were waiting to board trains at a station in Kramatorsk when a missile struck. Authorities say 50 people died in Friday's strike. The Russian Defense Ministry denies that it attacked the station in the eastern Donetsk region, but Mr. Zelensky and other Ukrainian leaders are accusing the Russian military of deliberately targeting a location where only civilians were assembled. Prosecutor General Irina Venediktova is in Bucha today as her office investigates civilian deaths there and other mass casualties involving civilians as possible war crimes. Meanwhile, Japan is expelling 8 Russian diplomats and trade officials and will phase out imports of Russian coal and oil. Prime Minister Fumio Kishida says Moscow must be held accountable for war crimes in Ukraine. He says Japan will also ban imports of Russian lumber, vodka, and other goods. And it will prohibit new Japanese investment within Russia. It will also step up sanctions against Russian banks and freeze assets of about 400 more individuals and groups. But reduction of Russian fossil fuel imports is a difficult choice for resource-poor Japan. Russia accounts for about 11% of Japanese coal imports and ranks among the top exporters of LNG and oil. While Russia's invasion of Ukraine continues to impact food prices, the UN Food and Agriculture Organization says prices for grains and vegetable oils reached record highs last month. And it warns that the massive supply disruptions the war is causing threatens millions of people in Africa, the Middle East, and parts of Asia with hunger and malnourishment. Other large grain producers like Canada, the U.S., France, Australia, and Argentina are being watched closely to see if they can quickly ramp up production to fill the gaps. But farmers in those countries face issues like climbing fuel and fertilizer costs, drought, and supply chain disruptions. Tragedy in Israel. A third Israeli has died following an attack by a Palestinian man who opened fire into a crowded bar in central Tel Aviv. 2 other people were instantly killed in the Thursday evening shooting in an area packed with people in bars and restaurants. Israeli security forces say the attacker was tracked down following an overnight manhunt, and he was killed in an exchange of fire. It was the 4th deadly attack in Israel by Palestinians in less than 3 weeks, and it came amid heightened tensions around the start of the Islamic holy month of Ramadan. Tens of thousands attended Friday's prayers in Jerusalem with no immediate reports of unrest. Chinese leader Xi Jinping has told outgoing Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte that the 2 nations have properly handled the sensitive issue of the disputed South China Sea. Mr. Xi made his remarks in a phone conversation with Mr. Duterte, who nurtured closer ties with Beijing after taking office in 2016. Despite cozier relations, however, sporadic territorial conflicts have persisted, and Beijing has had limited success separating the Philippines from its treaty ally, the United States. The Philippines holds presidential elections on May 9th. All right, let's move to France now, where voters in Sunday's presidential election will use the same system that's been used for generations. They will cast paper ballots that are counted by hand. Despite periodic calls for more flexibility or modernization, France doesn't do mail-in voting, early voting, or use voting machines at all. People who can't go to the polls for various reasons can authorize someone else to vote for them. 12 candidates have qualified for Sunday's ballot. President Emmanuel Macron is the clear frontrunner, though an unprecedented proportion of people say they are unsure who they will vote for or whether they will vote at all. Some big news coming out of Hollywood. The Motion Picture Academy has banned Will Smith from attending the Oscars or any other Academy event for 10 years. This is following his slap of Chris Rock at the Academy Awards. The Academy's Board of Governors made the decision in a meeting on Friday. They called Mr. Smith's actions unacceptable and harmful. Will Smith resigned from the Academy last week and said he would accept any punishment handed down. Cooking classes are making positive changes for some younger people. A virtual cooking class for 8 to 18-year-olds from low-income families in Flint, Michigan improved cooking, self-efficacy, attitude towards cooking, and the quality of life of young participants. Flint Families Cook was developed by local dietitians, chefs, and researchers, and since it started in January 2021, it has involved 80 children from 55 families. The 5-week program is facilitated by a chef and dietitian and encourages families to cook healthy meals together at home using local ingredients. Take care, Canada. We'll see you next time.